Picture this. A day that starts out totally normal, sun shining, birds are singing, but then in a blink, it becomes a day everybody remembers for all the wrong reasons. That's what we're looking at today, the Utica, Illinois tornado back in 2004.
Right, and we're zeroing in on the story of Milestone Tavern using this incredible series by Julia Keller, the one that won the Pulitzer Prize from the Chicago Tribune.
Yeah, the Pulitzer Prize, that's a big deal. So what makes Keller's work stand out? I mean, we've all seen the news reports, the footage of tornadoes.
It's like she takes us past the numbers, past all the technical jargon, and puts us right there with the people who lived through it. You feel what they felt, understand why they made the choices they did. It's powerful stuff.
Okay, so paint a picture for us. April 20th, 2004, just another Tuesday in Utica. But, like you said, a storm's brewing. That sky is getting that, ominous gray we all know.
And that's the thing, right? This is Illinois. Storms, they're practically a way of life.
Part of the routine. So people probably weren't thinking tornado right away.
Probably not. And that's where this story gets really interesting. Because even now, with all our fancy technology, predicting tornadoes, especially where they'll hit and how strong they'll be, well, it's still more art than science. You know what I mean?
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, we've got Doppler radar, all those computer models.
Sure. But a tornado, it's like, imagine trying to predict exactly which way a leaf is going to blow in a hurricane. We can see the ingredients for a tornado are there, the warm air, the cold front, all that. But saying for certain where that funnel cloud is going to touch down, that's the tricky part.
So, while the meteorologists are watching the radar, life in Utica is just not happening.
Exactly.
Keller introduces us to people like Shelba Bim, retired teacher, on her way to EMT class, probably more worried about getting caught in the rain than a tornado. Then there's Lyle Ellsbury, over at Duffy's Tavern, getting ready for the evening crowd, just trying to keep his business going. We'll come back to him. His story is do something else. And of course, there's Larry and Marion Ventris, brand new owners of Milestone Tavern. No idea what's about to hit them, literally, or that their billing has this whole history, about to get a whole lot more tragic.
And this is what we call ground truth. We can have all the data in the world, wind speed, barometric pressure, the works. But it's the people, their stories, that turn a storm, a weather event, into a real tragedy.
So true. Okay, so this storm, it's getting closer to Utica. The sky is getting darker, windier. People are starting to notice. But still, there's this sense of, we've seen this before. It's just another storm.
This is where even the best warning systems, even today, can fail. Because even when those sirens go off, you get the alerts on your phone, there's still this gap, right, between being warned and actually taking action. And that gap is even bigger in places where, well, severe weather is just part of life.
You like that story about the boy who cried wolf?
Yeah.
Right. You hear about the danger so often and nothing really bad happens. You just tune it out. And it's heartbreaking because in Utica, two volunteer firefighters, Steve Maltez and Shane Burrows, they see what's happening and they make a choice, a tough one. They activate the town siren, even though they can't get a hold of their chief, even though they know they might get in trouble for it.
Talk about a small town, right? That sense of, these are our people and we've got to do what's right, rules be damned.
And knowing what happens next, their actions were really brave. Unfortunately, as we'll learn, not everyone heard the warning, but we'll get to that in a bit. And then, it hit. No warning, no slow buildup, just bam. Mother Nature unleashed. People said it was like this monstrous black column, wider than anything they had ever seen, just ripping through everything.
This wasn't your average spring storm. This was an F3 on the Fujita scale. Which means...
Well, hold on. For us non-meteorologists...
Right. F3, we're talking winds over 180 miles an hour. Easy. The kind of force that can rip a house right off its foundation, toss cars around like they're nothing, turn any little thing into a deadly missile.
And right in the path of this monster, you've got folks from Utica huddled in the basement of Milestone Tavern. They figured old building, thick stone walls, concrete roof, they'd be safe.
It just goes to show, even when faced with that kind of raw power, we still look for safety in the places we know, even when those places, well,
aren't as safe as we think.
Exactly.
Keller does this amazing job of setting the scene in that basement. It's dim, crowded, people packed in together. You've got the older folks, Beverly Wood, Wayne Ball, Helen Monkey, thinking this is the safest spot in town. Then there's the Miller family, Mike, Debbie, and 4 of their kids. Debbie worked at Milestone. It was like a second home. Some people even brought their beers down with them.
Can you imagine? That's how normal it seemed, at least at first.
Like just another Tuesday night.
Yeah.
Until it wasn't. And this is where the science, the data, it all collides with this human tragedy in the worst way.
Right.
See, when a tornado like that hits a building, it's not just the wind that gets you, right?
You're right, it's the pressure. It all happens so fast, most people don't even have time to process it.
Okay, so break it down for us.
Okay, so that tornado, it acts like a giant vacuum cleaner, creates this zone of incredibly low pressure right in the center. Now that zone passes over a building, and suddenly the air pressure inside the building, it's still normal, right? So it pushes out, tries to equalize, but with incredible force.
So it's like the building is exploding from the inside out.
Pretty much. And that's what happened to Milestone. In 10 seconds, the whole building just implodes. The terror, the noise, the feeling of all that stone collapsing, it's almost impossible to grasp.
Okay, so the tornado's gone. Try to picture what it looks like now. First responders are showing up, and Milestone Tavern, it's not even there anymore.
It's just gone, wiped off the map.
Sirens, dust everywhere, and this like silence you wouldn't believe, except for people shouting, trying to find anybody alive in that mess.
After a disaster like this, every second matters. It's all about finding survivors as fast as possible while keeping the rescue workers safe too, which is tough in all that unstable wreckage.
And you've got people like Joe Crissell, volunteer firefighter, doesn't even hesitate. He hears people trapped, crawls into this tiny space in the rubble, and all he's got are 10 snips.
10 snips? That's incredible.
10 snips. He starts digging.
Talk about bravery, right?
Right.
Crizelle's story and everybody who pitched in to help, it shows how important those specialized rescue teams are. They train for this, building collapses, everything.
It must be terrifying. They can't even see what they're doing half the time, just using their hands, their ears, anything they can to get people out of there.
Absolutely. And while they're pulling people out, they know that for every survivor, there's going to be, people
they can't save.
And that brings us to one of the saddest things about what happened at Milestone. A lot of folks didn't die from being crushed or hit by debris. It was something called traumatic asphyxiation.
Traumatic asphyxiation. What is that?
Basically, the weight of the building, all that debris, came down so fast and hard it pinned people down they couldn't breathe.
Oh, God.
Just horrifying. And once the rescue's done, the real work begins, Utica had to start healing, rebuilding, but that question, why, it just hangs there.
Why did some people make it while others just feet away didn't?
Those are questions we might never have answers for. But it's human nature to ask them, especially after something this awful. What we do know is surviving something like this, it's just the start.
The emotional, mental part, that's a whole other battle.
Exactly. So we see this guy, Mike Miller, he got out alive. But his son, 18 years old, he didn't make it.
Oh, God, I can't even imagine.
The relief of surviving, mixed with that kind of loss, unimaginable.
And then there's Debbie, Mike's wife. She found comfort, of all things, in the recipes from Milestone.
Really?
Yeah, she started making them again, sharing them. It was her way of remembering, of keeping those memories of the place, of the people alive.
That's powerful. Even when things are at their worst, we find ways to cope, to find meaning. It's amazing, really, like those owners of Duffy's Tavern, remember them?
Lyle and Pat Ellsbury, yeah. Their place was right there in the tornado's path, too.
And it barely got touched. That's tornadoes for you. So random. Can you imagine the survivor's guilt?
Must have been incredibly tough. Why us? Why not them?
And yet, they rebuilt. Duffy's reopened, became the symbol that Utica wasn't giving up, a place for people to come together again.
It's a powerful reminder that community, it's not just about living in the same place, it's about going through something together, supporting each other.
Exactly. And then there's Shelba Bim, that retired teacher we talked about.
She lost her home, didn't she?
She did, but she rebuilt. On higher ground this time, she didn't let it break her.
So what's the takeaway here? What do we learn from something like the Utica tornado?
This sounds cliche, but it's true. Life is precious. We've got to cherish every day the people we love. And when something terrible happens, and it will, we have to support each other. Because even in the face of the worst Mother Nature can dish out, the human spirit, it finds a way.
The Utica tornado, a story of loss, of incredible resilience, and of the power of community. The scars might fade, but the memories, the lessons learned, they stay with us.